All right, so my name is Carter, and the rest of my group is Gretchen, Ava, and Axel, and we studied the effects of caffeine on the YMCA bike test.
So, as an introduction and background, many athletes turn to caffeine to help boost their athletic performance. And caffeine is a naturally occurring central nervous system stimulant that blocks adenosine receptors. And these receptors promote sleep and slow the heart rate. So, when they are blocked, our bodies are more alert and focused and overall awake. So, caffeine is also a ergogenic aid, which means that it helps to aid in athletic performance, recovery, and energy. And athletes can consume caffeine in many forms, such as energy drinks, gum, gels, pills, and coffee. We also wanted to examine the effects of caffeine on predicted VO2 max and max work rate in a controlled environment. So to do that, we chose to use the YMCA submaximal cycle test. So this test takes place on a stationary bike and is conducted in four 3-minute long stages. And this test is submaximal because we are only reaching 85% of our participants' max heart rate. So also conducting this research is important for various reasons because so many athletes turn to caffeine and consume caffeine for athletic reasons. And it is important that these products actually work for athletes and people of all athletic abilities. So the notion of placebos is highly prevalent in our past research that we conducted. So we wanted to determine if the caffeine itself produces positive effects or if it's partly due to psychological factors outside of our control. If these products are purely psychological and show no real evidence of being effective, then these brands shouldn't be allowed to continue to sell their product in stores. So from a business standpoint, consumers deserve honest information and products that are marketed accurately. And from a competition standpoint, um, state-of-the-art athletes who compete in high caliber competition need to rely on products that will help them compete at their best abilities and levels. Um, Prior research that we conducted in previous presentations does show that caffeine consumption does improve VO2 max, but other research says that it doesn't. So due to these discrepancies in research, we wanted to examine caffeine's effect on VO2, as well as other measures like max heart rate, in our own research to come to a conclusion and obtain a definitive answer.
Research question. The main objective of this research project is to determine how caffeine consumption or lack of it affects a submaximal cycle ergometer test and overall VO2 max performance. Understanding that the form of caffeine a person consumes when they consume it and the sex of the person can have a significant impact on their ability to perform a submax test will be important to consider. Our hypotheses: we hypothesize that the students who consume caffeine before the test will have a higher predicted VO2 max and a higher max work rate than those students who do not consume caffeine before the test.
Okay, so for our methods, we use participants who are students in the 7 a.m. to 9:50 a.m. KNH 402 Capstone class at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. So for important measures, we took some before and during the test. So for before the test, we measured the participants' heart rate, blood pressure, their height, their weight, their age, sex, and amount of caffeine consumed in milligrams. And this is if the subject was assigned the caffeine condition. And then during the test, we took heart rate, blood pressure, and then asked them their RPE, which is the rating of perceived exertion. So for equipment used, we used a cycle ergometer, a heart rate monitor, which I was either a chest strap or a fitness watch, and a goniometer, which was used to calculate joint length when determining the seat height for the cycle ergometer. And then some methods and calculations that we used included calculating VO2 max, calculating a subject's maximum heart rate, and then also calculating their BMI or body mass index.
All right, so continuing our methods, we have our procedures. So we had subjects intake 200 milligrams of caffeine prior to the starting of the test, or the equivalent of it, of like 1 or 2 cups of coffee, i.e. Celsius coffee, like I said before. We instructed our subjects to sit in a chair for at least 5 minutes after consuming their caffeine. After that 5 minutes, we measured and recorded their resting heart rate and blood pressure using a heart rate monitor and spigometer, something some gonimeter or no, some measuring device. We measured and recorded weight, height, birth date, and BMI. And then we calculated subjects' predicted max heart rate 220 minus their heart rate. Um, I mean their yeah, heart rate. Calculated 85% of predicted max heart rate, explained the test protocol to subjects, including stage times for the entire test, pedaling cadence, heart rate and blood pressure measurements and timing, and the RPE chart. We adjusted the seat height on the Monarch cycle ergometer so that the subject's knee is 5 to 15 degrees in the pedal down position and ensured the subject is comfortable. We also adjusted the set Monarch cycle ergometer resistance to 0.5 kg for the first stage. Once all pre-test procedures have been completed, we continued with the test procedures. So here's the test protocol. As you can see, everybody starts in the first stage with 150 kilograms per minute or zero point 0.5 kilograms. And depending on their heart rate going into stage two after 3 minutes, they go into one of these four columns. You know, if they have less than 80 heart rate, we turn up the bike to 2.5 kilograms and then stay in that same column for the rest of the test. See, as you see, you go into the second stage, 2.5 kilograms, then three, then 3.5. And that goes along for about 12 minutes. Here we have the results. As you can see in figure one, this is the predicted VO2 max with caffeine and without caffeine. Overall, you can see that most of the subjects that we took, the 5 subjects that actually did both caffeine and without caffeine trials, were pretty close. We had 2 outliers, but the other people that were pretty close were within 5 points of each other. Our first outlier had, when they took caffeine, doubled their predicted VO2 max or just about doubled it. And then you can see in our second outlier here in subject three, their VO2 max actually regressed when they took caffeine. Uh, so, and then our second figure here, we have the max work rate with caffeine and without caffeine. Kind of a similar situation, except we have 3 outliers now, one, two, one, three, and four. Subject in two and five, both kind of remained in the same kind of area of each other when they took both within 5 points of each other or so. And then again, you can see how subject one has their work rate double when they are on caffeine. And then subject three again, same thing. And then subject four actually had an increase in max work rate, um, which is interesting. So 2 outliers with caffeine.
We only had 5 subjects that completed both the caffeine and without caffeine YMCA submaximal trials. We had subjects 1 and subject 3, drastically different data compared to the other subjects, making them both an outlier. In our predicted VO2 max, taking away the outliers, the with and without caffeine showed VO2 max would stay relatively the same. In figure 1 of the results section, subject 1 was the only subject that had a higher predicted VO2 max with caffeine compared to predicted VO2 max without caffeine, which was in our hypothesis. Subjects 2 through 5 either had a lower VO2 max with caffeine or about the same when compared without caffeine. So maybe like a 10 to 5 point difference. In the predicted max work rate in figure 2, subject 1 and subject 4 had a higher predicted max work rate with caffeine, while the others had a lower predicted max work rate with caffeine compared to without caffeine. Some of the reasons that we were thinking about why the results were not as what we expected compared to the research that we did prior throughout the semester. One of them could be human error. with blood pressure during the test. Sometimes the minutes weren't lining up exactly to what the protocol asked for, whether we had to take it multiple times or not. Getting the leg angle correct on the cycle, we had a little bit of help from the professor, but once we were on our own, sometimes like maybe we didn't get it exactly what it needed to be in that range. And then also Apple's heart rate monitor on the watch. During the test, the heart rate that was popping up on the watch for us to record kind of jumped around a little bit. Sometimes it would be more on the higher end, other times it would say be down on the lower end. So if they are in minute 11 of the submax test and we looked at their heart rate could either say 90 or 150. It just kind of jumped around a little bit too much. And then also having a small group of participants to be able to participate in the trials. It's kind of hard to compare data with only 5 people who did both the caffeinated and the non-caffeinated.
Limitations. Small group of participants of only 10. Only 5 participants actually completed both caffeine and non-caffeinated trials. Only 2 subjects could be tested at a time. In some circumstances, the subjects tested did not consume caffeine at all due to various reasons, so they had to be tested twice without caffeine. Sessions took place every Thursday for only 2 weeks. In some cases, we didn't get to test all the 10 participants because they were unable to attend. Not all participants had their own heart rate monitors, so Apple Watches or heart rate monitors had to be borrowed. We only had one male participant. Did not account for participants' prior average caffeine consumption.
And for our conclusion, our results show that there was no effect on caffeine and predicted VO2 max or the max power output. We suggest for future research, researchers have more diverse group of participants, different age groups. So our study consisted of college age students, 21 and 22, and then different sexes because we did only have that one male participant. Also, have participants not consume caffeine for at least a week prior to the study due to some students may have been used to having caffeine every day, while other students may hardly ever drink caffeine, may only have it once a week. So bringing that down and taking out that aspect could potentially make the results a little bit different than what we saw. Thank
Thank you
you.
for listening.
Thank you for watching.